You have the absolute right to determine what you want to buy and support and what you don't want to buy and support. You don't have the right to tell us what we should or shouldn't publish.
Lounging, son.
Welcome to the Comic Lounge. Today I have a very, very special guest for you guys. I have Jim Valentino, one of the co-founders of Image Comics. How's it going, Jim?
Going great. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for being here. It's an honor to have you here. I know we did a chat a couple years ago when I first started my site, but I'm really glad to have you back and be able to get this on camera.
Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So you started collecting when Marvel started coming out, right? Or was it prior to that? Or
prior to that.
Beginning? Okay, but you were around when Marvel started. So you
yeah.
saw the beginnings of Marvel. I was wondering, was that when your love for comics started? Or did it start a little bit, was it before that?
Oh, much before that. No, I started drawing off of the television when I was about 2. And my father realized that I was drawing basically comics in a very comic type style, just naturally. And so he read comics during World War II. So he brought home a bunch of comics. I don't remember which ones, but he brought home like an armload of comics for me. And that was it. It was like a bolt of lightning. It was what other people call a religious experience. That was my experience with comics. And it was just lifelong.
So do you, I mean, you said you don't remember the titles exactly, but do you remember like maybe the genres, like what you gravitated more towards?
Well, I always gravitated more towards superhero comics.
Okay.
I didn't find funny animal or humor comics to be very funny. And that's true throughout my life. I just never found them to be very funny. Purposely funny comics, I never found to be very funny. So until Robert Crumb happened, I found him to be really funny.
Yeah, Robert Crumb, he's amazing.
So I gravitated towards and that was his favorite genre as well, was superhero comics. He was a big Superman fan.
Okay. And then, so since literally just a couple weeks ago, we're talking about, sort of in the beginnings of your comics, but I wanted to jump in. So you saw Marvel in the beginning. And if I remember correctly, in last interview that I watched with you, you said it was accessible because you were able to get in on the ground floor, or readers at that time. It was a little more accessible in terms of there's no, like, this is the beginning of a universe. So you didn't have to like know a bunch of stuff because you were learning for the first time. Now, Image did that in the 90s. I was a kid in the 90s. So I'm kind of a product of that. And like, yeah, it's way easier to start with the number one. No, don't be sorry. I love those comics, but there's good and bad in everything, right?
Sure.
But do you think that was partial for the success of Image, besides just you guys leaving Marvel making waves across the industry? Do you think it made it easier for maybe people that weren't into comics before to jump in with this brand new universe?
Well, it depended on your point of view, I guess. But I think it was a whole, perfect storm kind of thing. We had 3 of the biggest people in comics at the time all together, brand new universe, brand new comics, higher production values. We put money into the actual books themselves, so the coloring was different than what everybody else was doing at the time. The paper stock was better. I mean, we really, we hit the ground floor running.
I've always wanted to ask this, and I always forget anytime I talk to you guys, Image in the beginning. How did you guys develop the different coloring techniques early on? It looked way different. I mean, you guys were doing way different stuff than Marvel.
It was computer coloring. I mean, it was done on the computer. So, I mean, that was the difference right there. The old Marvel and DCs at the time were still doing Rubylith coloring. So they were still doing the old-fashioned version of coloring. We were doing computer coloring, which was more expensive. It looked better, looked very cool. So it's the difference between cutting Rubyliths or Zipatone,
Mm-hmm.
and Photoshop. And
Okay.
that was the difference right there.
Okay. All right, cool. And I know you, like I said, I know you told us some stories, the early days of Image, on the Kayfabe channel. But I was wondering if you maybe could share a couple stories just from the early days, maybe that you didn't share before, that maybe my listeners might be really into hearing.
Well, it's hard to pick something out of the hat. It's like you sort of got to put a dime in the jukebox, and then we take off. I'll tell you one. I think it was 1992. I'm pretty sure it was, at San Diego. And Bill Shanis, who was pretty much Steve Jeppy's second at Diamond.
Oh, okay.
Bill came up to me. We'd known each other for many, many years from San Diego, and said he wanted a meeting with the guys. And I said, well, I don't know, let me talk and see, And so I talked to the guys, went back to Bill and said, okay, we're having a party up in the penthouse at the Hyatt. So the guy said, meet us up there at midnight. Now, Bill is a very straight East Coast guy, and we're talking midnight West Coast, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he turns white. Okay. So in the middle of this huge party, he comes in and he's like, okay, well, when can we meet? I don't know. Not everybody's here yet, so it'll be a bit, I don't know how long we had him waiting. And when we finally ushered him in, we ushered him into the bedroom. The party is going on outside. We're in the bedroom around this big giant bed. And I'm leaning on one end of the bed. Mark Silvestri is leaning on the other end of the bed. Eric Larson is at the headboard on the right-hand side. Todd is in the middle. And the only place for Bill to sit is next to Todd up on the headboard, right? So Jim comes walking in, and he and Angie had just had a baby, their first child. So he's got the baby in a sling, and he's walking around the room with the baby, trying to keep the baby asleep. And Rob comes bursting through the door after a while, falls down at the end of the bed and falls asleep immediately. And Bill is like, and Todd goes, yeah, but he makes all our decisions. So Bill is telling us that, the whole entire industry is looking at us to lead and blah, blah, blah. And our response almost to a man was, if you're looking for us to lead the industry, this industry is fucked, because we are the biggest fuck-ups ever. After we have, we're going on with this meeting and blah, 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 and Bill's trying to instill some responsibility into us. And Todd all of a sudden bursts up from the bed, just sits up, and he slaps his head and he goes, oh my God, I just realized we're in bed with Diamond. That was what an Image meeting was like.
And is that when you guys started the exclusivity with Diamond?
No, that was later on. Years later, yeah.
Well, since you kind of told the story about Diamond, I'll ask this now instead of later. So DC caused some pretty big waves with leaving Diamond, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I as a DC fan growing up, I know you were more Marvel. I mean, I love.
No. I was both.
Okay. I work in retail now. I've been working there for a little over a year. So I'm seeing stuff that I didn't pay attention to before. I was a fan. I've always been very interested in every aspect of the industry, but I never knew the retail. Well, I'll tell you my opinion. I thought it was fucked up. I think their decision to do it at the time of the state of the country during a pandemic, horrible decision. Whether they want to leave or not, maybe you should make more than a fucking half-ass plan to do so, and not do it when the industry is basically could have been destroyed due to the pandemic, with no books coming in, stores closing down, all this stuff. So you're kind of agreeing with me, so I can kind of tell what your opinion on it is. But what is your opinion on distribution? Do you think that Diamond being the sole distributor, well, I don't want to get you in a bind, but what's your opinion on it? Basically, I don't want to like make you say something that
I think DC made another stupid move. This isn't the first stupid move that DC has made along these lines. If it wasn't for DC, Diamond wouldn't have a monopoly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what happened was Marvel took over a small distributorship on the East Coast. Okay?
Heroes, right?
Heroes World.
Mm-hmm.
And promised the industry that they would not self-distribute because everybody got nervous. There were lots of distributors at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Then in the week between Christmas and New Year's, they announced that they were going to self-distribute. DC pushed the panic button and signed an exclusivity deal with Diamond. That started the distributor wars. As we got into the convention season, into the spring, there were two distributors, Diamond and Capital City. The thing was that faced the major publishers at the time, which were Dark Horse, Image, and Valiant at the time, that Marvel had, and now DC, had the ability for brokerage. And what that means is that they could determine their own terms, okay? Mm-hmm. They could set their terms for how they sell their books. So what we had told, and I learned later what Dark Horse and Valiant had told both Diamond and Capital City, was this was the break point. We needed to be able to set our own terms. We needed brokerage. Because that put us on parity with Marvel and DC, okay? They could set their terms, so we had to be able to set our terms in order to create a semi-level playing field, okay? Mm-hmm. Capital City absolutely steadfastly refused. They weren't going to do it. Diamond said, yeah, sure, okay. Diamond wins. I know people have a lot of complaints about Diamond, but Diamond moves an awful lot of product every single month, and they do a fairly good job of it. Nobody's perfect,
right.
Okay? I know Steve Jeppy personally. I consider him a friend. I like him very much. I think he's a very good guy. And that's true with a lot of people at Diamond. Bill Shanis, Roger. There were just so many people that were really, really good folks. So I have no real rap against Diamond. Okay, and I think what DC did and the way that they did it was very short-sighted, very, very stupid. And I don't think it's going to work out well for them, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, I just like, you know, based on what retailers were saying, how they're like, well, we'll just order subscriber only. We won't have their stuff on the shelf. And they're very warranted in their feelings. And it just feels like, you know, corporate, once again, is like, they've got their hands in it. It doesn't seem like they care as much about the printing side, because that's like a drop in the bucket to them in terms of money. And it just, I don't know.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, the way that they see it is there's 80 years of content that they can pull TV shows and movies from.
Right.
Which, you know, on one hand is understandable if you're counting pennies. It's definitely a slap in the face to retailers. No two ways around that.
Yeah. This is purely fanboy question real quick. I'll get it out of the way. I was wondering the first time you met Kirby, he's been on my mind a lot lately. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about maybe your relationship with him, what it was like meeting him for the first time, because in my opinion, he's, well, not just my opinion, he's one of the most influential creators that's ever put pencil to paper.
If not the most.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a hero of mine, obviously. At my very first convention, I had a table and was selling drawings for $2 each, just to try to make enough money to eat that night, you know. And I was very fortunate in that I was sitting next to a guy who would become my mentor and my father figure, and who would teach me a whole lot about a whole lot of things, named Ken Kruger. Ken was he was a member of First Fandom, which means he attended the very first science fiction convention ever in the 1940s. So he went back. He had history. At any rate, we were talking. I had noticed we were in a sort of antechamber room, and I'd noticed in the main room there was this like phalanx of people walking up and down the corridors, like a walking comet almost. And I turned to Ken and I go, "What's that?" And he goes, "Oh, Kirby." I was like, "Oh man, Jack Kirby, man, he's my hero, So unbeknownst to me, Ken, who knew Jack, went up and told him, and I'm doing this drawing, and I get this hand in front of my face. "I heard you wanted to meet me." I about died. I don't know how I held my composure or my bladder. It was unbelievable, to meet him. The last time I saw him was at Eric Stevenson's first wedding, and my ex-wife Diane and Roz were talking and blah blah blah, and I held out my hand to Jack to shake his hand and introduced myself. I said, "Hi, Jack, I'm Jim Valentino." And Roz hit me in the shoulder. She goes, "Jim, you don't have to introduce yourself to him every time. He knows who you are." And I was like, "It doesn't compute that he knows who I am." I said, he should not know who I am. But I do have a better story about the Kirbys if you want to hear it.
Oh, of course. Yes. I'd love to.
When we first formed Image, before it was publicly known, right?
Mm-hmm.
Todd calls me up with this harebrained idea, oddly enough, says that he wants to he goes, "You know how in every Marvel comic it says Stan Lee presents?" Yeah. So what about in every Image comic we put Jack Kirby presents? And I went, "No, Todd, that's not okay. We can't do that. It's just not right on so many levels." I said, he goes, "Well, you can call up Kirby, right?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "You got his phone number?" "Yeah." He goes, I said, "Do you want me to tell him what we're doing?" And he goes, "Yeah, could you do that?" And I went, "Yeah." So I call up the house and Roz answers. "Hi, Roz, it's Jim Valentino." "Oh, hi, Jim. How are you?" Wonderful Jewish mother, she was just straight through and through. And so I told her what we were going to do. And she said, "Wait a minute, I'm going to go out and tell Jack." Jack's studio was in the garage. She went out, was gone for about 5 minutes. She came back tearfully saying, "God bless you, boys. Let us know if there's anything that we can do to help you." They knew about Image before anybody else did.
Wow, that's an awesome story. I always wondered how that came about too, and I wouldn't have thought. I would have remembered to ask. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and she, from then on, for the rest of her life, she called us the Image Boys, which was kind of a badge of honor, if you would,
Yeah, and it's stuck all this time too. I still see people referring to you guys as the Image Boys. So
that's Roz Kirby.
Awesome, man. I wanted to jump into your. I know I'm jumping around. I wanted to jump into your time as publisher.
Uh-huh.
I did talk to you in the past about it briefly, but you heralded in a new age in Image. You really got down to the bare bones, and I know you talked about stories. What's important, right?
Yes.
And I was wondering if any of the changes or anything that you brought to the table during your time as publisher, what really stands out to you still, or things that you're really proud of that you implemented?
I think what I'm most proud of, besides the people that I brought in, which were, a lot of extremely good people, I think. And I hope I raised the bar a little bit or started that.
Mm-hmm.
That was my goal. But I'm really proud that Eric Stevenson, who basically trained under me, more or less, has carried it on and carried it on in a much larger way. And in a much more impressive way than I did. So I think that's what I'm proud of, that we changed the face of image from what people thought it was or what they thought we were supposed to be. You know, because everybody said, well, this is a superhero company. No, 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 no. They missed the whole point. And I'm proud that we changed the face. That's the biggest thing.
So I wanted to get into one of the most important topics, I think, nowadays in comics, which is diversity. I've been talking a lot about it with, fellow people on my site. I've been talking about with fellow creators. Everybody that I interview, I've pretty much touched on it a little bit. What do you think we need to see more of in terms of creators, books, and representation in the comic industry?
I think Image has a really incredible track record as far as it goes. I mean, we have worked with people from all stripes. I mean, hell, we've even worked with tall people. I mean, it's like we've done everything, and I think that's important. I think what's important is you don't look at, well, the tall people joke is part of it. You don't look at someone because they're tall and say, no, I don't do books with those people. It's like, no, don't be stupid. You base it on the story. You base it on the book. Let the book speak for itself. Everybody, well, not everybody. Everybody can tell a story, and everybody can bring something good to the table. It doesn't matter if you're disabled. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, gay, straight, trans. None of that matters. It's not important. What's important is the story. What's important is the artwork. What's important is that you bring something that wasn't there before. The only things I'm not really interested in is seeing another Superman, another Fantastic Four, a regurgitation of something that has existed before. There's enough of that. Let's move on. Let's move on to other genres, other fields, books that you can't classify, that the story is just so cool. It goes beyond description, and it doesn't matter who makes it. So I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. I can't say we have to have a quota of black people or gay people or whatever people. We have to have a quota of good creators.
Right. Well, I was also saying in terms of like the representation in stories too, right? Like, I was talking to a creator and he said, well, if people aren't seeing themselves represented in the stories that are being published, like maybe that's why we're not, the pool of creators, of diverse creators is not very big, right? Like he brought up an example of like Asian characters at Marvel, Shang-Chi, and there's not very many. And then he brought up, how Wonder Woman, for example, wasn't written by a woman until the 80s. So she was created in the 40s, but like not till then. So that's also more what I was asking, if like you think there needs to be diversity also in the representation in the stories that are being published, also not just necessarily, so that maybe the pool of creators is big. It's not necessarily filling a quota. You know what I mean?
Well, I know I got criticism for writing ShadowHawk as a black man. Okay. So it's the exact opposite of that. It's sort of like, well, how can you write a story about a black man? You're not black. Well, but I'm a man. I've written stories about women that can fly, not a woman, and I can't fly. I think a big problem is when I don't know if there's a name for it or not, but I think when they take a Caucasian character and all of a sudden make him black or make him Asian or whatever, it's there must be a false diversification, something like that. I'm not sure exactly what you would call it. I think that's a bigger problem.
I agree.
So if you create a character from the ground up, who's gay or who's black or who's Asian or whatever, that's okay. I don't have any problem with that. But yeah.
Yeah, I know it's I don't know if I'm wording it right either when I'm asking you. I'm trying to word it. Okay. But yeah, I agree with that. The forced diversification. Maybe
There-
that's what I think that's what it's called. And again, I don't care if a character is gay, but changing Iceman and making him gay, I was kind of like, what's the point? Where did this
Well, but
come
okay,
from?
but in defense of that move, I don't know about you, but I know a lot of gay people who it takes them a very, very long time to come to grips with their sexuality and who they are. And so it would be easy, and I don't know the story or how it was written or anything like that, but it
Mhm.
would be very, very easy for a character like, say, Iceman, to, in his mid-20s or however old he is, to come to grips with the fact that he is gay. And I know an
Yeah.
awful lot of people before they get to that point
Well,
who
my
lie to themselves.
yeah, my issues, not that he like all of a sudden came out, it was people trying like, and maybe this is just the internet,
To
maybe
shoehorn it
this
in.
is yeah, they're like, oh well, don't you remember in this issue, blah blah blah. Like you can clearly see, like, what do you mean? Like the writers weren't writing him as gay or conflicted in his emotions. Like so, it's more that. And don't get me wrong, I love Bendis, and he's the one that wrote the story.
Is he?
Yeah, huge fan of his work. And not to take anything away from it. Sina Grace wrote an Iceman series that was very well received, very well written. It's just there's ways to Thor was turned into a woman, but it felt natural. You know what I mean? Like it was the story progressed, and then it was Jane Foster became Thor, so it made like the storyline made sense. It wasn't changing Thor into a woman.
Yeah, but again, the thing is that it takes some people, not all, but some people, an awful long time to come to grips with it. It's a life-changing and very difficult decision, okay, which is why I'm completely against outing people. It's not something you should do. But I know plenty of gay, lesbian, trans people, and how difficult it's been for them to make that transition, So if a character who was normally straight or seen to be normal, straight historically, comes out as gay or as sexually fluid, as long as they write it correctly, and like I said, I didn't read the story where Iceman came out, so I don't know how Brian handled it. But as long as they do it with some sensitivity and stuff for how difficult that transition is, and it is difficult.
Okay, so well, you maybe just think of it differently. So you're saying that it's almost a stronger story because they can witness this character that was holding on to it,
Right.
And now they're seeing this person come to terms. Okay.
Also, there's other
so I'm
things,
taking it differently.
There's other things to deal with too. Let's say you have a straight character involved in a straight relationship, okay, with someone of the opposite sex, and they come to realize this is a really good relationship, but something's not right. And they realize they've been holding back on their own sexuality and blaming all failed relationships on bad people and people that they've chosen that weren't right. Now here's somebody who is right. Or they've fallen in love with this person but realize they're more attracted to their own sex. Something like the Freddie Mercury story.
Yeah.
He absolutely loved that woman all throughout his life. And he was completely in love with her. Gave her everything he owned when he died. Susan Austin, I think is her name. But he was gay. And I know plenty of gay people that are in love with someone of the opposite sex. And it's just too complex an issue to paint it black and white, cut and dry. To say, well, he's never been gay before, so he can't be gay now. Sure he can. Why not? He could be gender fluid now. He could be whatever. That's how you build character. That's how you create a situation. In the case of someone who's in a monogamous dual sex relationship, well, there are feelings on both sides of that. So the person who isn't gay, the person who was in this relationship, they may have hurt feelings. They may be supportive and loving, but they could also feel very hurt and used. And there's lots of story potential there, I think.
I didn't look at it from that aspect before. So I appreciate you, kind of enlightening me a little bit. Going back to Image and stuff, like, you were a publisher. I know Eric Larson followed you, Eric Stevenson. Another big thing happened during that time, though. You guys made Robert Kirkman a partner. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, and if there's like how that came to be, and if there's the possibility of that ever happening again, where you guys might want to add another partner.
Eric Stevenson became a partner just a couple years ago. So yeah, Eric and Robert both. What happened with Robert? I'm pretty sure I brought Robert in.
Yeah, because Walking Dead, right, and Battle Pope and that stuff.
He did stuff before then. No, Tech Jacket and a couple of other things that he had done before then. Didn't do a whole lot. He didn't have a great track record until Walking Dead. Invincible was okay. It was a good seller, but it wasn't a slam dunk the way Walking Dead was, obviously.
Right.
What happened was when Robert started getting hot, Marvel snatched him up. And he went over to Marvel. I think he was there for about a year and didn't like it. He didn't like the material they gave him to work with. He didn't like the structure and the restrictions. It's he decided, he made that manifesto, which he got a lot of shit for. And he decided he was just going to do creator-owned comics from then on. And he was going to do them with Image because he had such a good relationship with Image and with everybody at Image. I know that he and Eric Stevenson must be pretty close to best friends, at this point. Mm-hmm. So we talked about it, amongst ourselves and said, what if we offer Robert a partnership? And I think Todd was probably his biggest supporter in that, and that Todd said he's willing to put all of his eggs in our basket, so we should support him. And that's basically how it came about, we all agreed, we all liked Robert, we all liked what he was doing. He's an incredibly smart guy, so it was easy. And there you go. He became a partner. We all agreed, voted on it. Boom, you're a partner. Same thing with Eric Stevenson. Same kind of thing. That loyalty. As far as other partners go, it's not that we're looking for other partners. There's an old Jewish curse. May you always have partners. It's not like we're looking,
Yeah.
But if it came up, also Robert was much younger than all the rest of us, particularly me. He hadn't gotten into triple digits yet or anything like that. So, the thing is, we felt he could bring some new ideas into the company and some, inject something new to us old fogies. So, and he did, so yay.
Yeah, I mean, I think what he did this past week, with the Negan Lives book, I think that was pretty fucking cool. Sending all those free books and paying for them himself. And I know, as at the shop I'm at, I know that the owner really appreciated it, the manager. I mean, it's probably one of the coolest things I've seen. Actually, it's the only cool thing I've seen any of the publishers do. Since then, I know some of them have been like, the return policy has been different, but this really brought in a lot of people into the shop calling, "Oh,
That's
you guys
great.
have Negan Lives? You have Negan Lives?"
Yeah,
so
that's great. That is great. I do hope that retailers realize that Image is not their enemy. That we've been supportive all along.
Yeah, I definitely think you guys are probably. Not probably. You guys are way more supportive than the big two. I think Image it's my favorite publisher. I know that I find myself dwindling down from DC and Marvel. Like every couple of months, I take another book, and then another Image book gets added to my list.
Well, the thing is, you should only collect those things that you like. I mean, you brought up earlier the Marvel Image dichotomy. I've never been an us or them kind of guy, which is probably why I don't like sports. I'm like, DC, Marvel, they both have cool books.
Right.
Why choose? It's like, why would you limit yourself that way? That was brought home once. George Perez was telling me this story after he had moved from Marvel to DC. He said this kid, must have been middle school age, came up to him and said, "I really love your work, Mr. Perez, but I just can't collect it anymore." And he said, "Why not?" It's because you work for DC now, and I don't collect DC. And George is like, "It's the same stuff." There's that whole dichotomy, which I just can't abide by.
Yeah, well, I don't want to say, I'm not trying to say like I'm one or the other, but like I've always kind of gravitated towards the DC because that was the first stuff I read, But yeah, I found myself blind loyalty to characters, and I'm like, why am I, like, the quarantine helped me look at it. I'm like, why the fuck am I buying these books and I'm not even excited to read it? I'm just getting it because of the character. If I want to read the character, I have years of stories that I can go back and read.
Right.
And that helped me cut so much more stuff. I mean, because I'm not that happy with the majority, and I'm fine with saying the majority of what they're putting out is not very exciting to me. The majority of what indie stuff is coming out with, that excites me. That keeps me engaged on a weekly basis.
And that is what should dictate your buying habits. What are you interested in reading? That should always be it. Not to continue a collection or whatever. I buy every X-Men comic there is. Really? Really? But there's so much other stuff out there. Not that the X-Men are bad. They're not. It's just.
Yeah. But buying 20 X titles doesn't really leave room for you to try other stuff. Yeah, you know what I mean? And like, especially with what Marvel's doing with their X books right now, they were putting out 8 titles twice a month, and I'm just like, I don't understand how and people would just buy X books. I'm like, how? And I would tell the customers, like, why don't you guys try other stuff? Why don't you like cut back on one of the X-Men books? Nope. And it's, I'll only get the main X-Men. I'm like, that's fine. One X book is enough for me. I don't need to read 16 issues a month.
I'll tell you something that works better in retail is when you see somebody buying a certain type of book, say, have you tried this? It's really similar to it. And then what we used to do, and you'd probably have to check with your owner or whatever, is we would say, take this book, try it. We think you'll like it. If you don't like it, bring it back in 1 week, perfect condition. And if you do like it, pay for it. And we would get so many new readers to try new things that way.
Yeah, that's one of like the fun things about working in the shop is I love recommending stuff. Like I have friends that ask me, but there's something else about meeting a stranger. They don't know me, or regulars do, but like some random person will come in, I'll be like, they're like, what do you like? And they'll just let me blindly, and I push a lot of Craig Thompson. I'm a huge fan of his work.
Me too.
His Ginseng Roots series that has been coming out is phenomenal. I mean, I love that series so much. And I think he's one of the greatest cartoonists of
ever.
this.
Yeah. I think the funny thing about that particular book is I have absolutely no point of reference whatsoever to what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And yet I love the book. He's that good.
Yeah,
he is that good. I've never been on a farm, much less grown up on one. It's like I'm a city boy through and through. But oh man, it's like he's just so bloody good. Yeah, I love Craig Town. I think he's back in town. Jim.
Yeah, I think
he was back in town.
I think he's living in Portland again. Yeah. He's his work is just. Blankets was the first book I read, and I fell in love. I was like, this is great. This is something else.
Yeah, wonderful book.
So, we talked about distribution with Diamond. Kickstarter has been a huge, huge thing for creators to distribute their books. I was wondering what your opinion on it is. Do you think it's a great tool that like maybe they can get their books funded beforehand and then like do something with Image. You know what I'm saying? So that it's less of a risk for the creators and they can get their money up front, as opposed to, I know that I've heard creators say like, you know, the process of before they get money, it's like they put on all this time and then you have to wait for the book to come out and then you have to wait a couple months for that to get the final numbers. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about Kickstarter, what you think about it.
Well, the strength and the weakness of Image is that it's a meritocracy, okay? So it is solely based on how your book sells. Image owns no IPs. So we can't make television shows, we can't make movies, we can't create those revenue streams for a creator if his book takes off to capitalize on. So what that means, but inversely, if your book does take off, you get the lion's share of everything from it. You own the copyright, you own the trademark, you own all ancillary rights, you own the property. We don't. Okay? So you're the one who can benefit from your creation. So the quandary, the double-edged sword is that if your book tanks, you're fucked. You get nothing. If your book succeeds, you can become a millionaire. And several people have. Okay, become millionaires just by publishing the comic book. As far as Kickstarter goes, if that's the way you want to go, sure, why not? A creator should take every available opportunity. When I first started, we did Xerox comics. And you take a piece of 8.5 by 11 sheet bond paper or whatever, fold it in 4s, and you'd have a mini comic. You're in, you're out. What it does is it teaches you what works in terms of printing and what doesn't work. How small of a line should you draw? How thick of a line should you draw? How do things look when they're reproduced? It also allows you to put that book away for a while and then take it back out where all you can see is what you need to work on. My wife used to get mad at me when a book would come out because I'd set it on my bedpost and just be depressed for the whole entire week. And she'd be like, this is what you want. Why are you so depressed? And I said, because I open it up and all I can see is everything I tried to do but couldn't do, that I just couldn't reach that goal, that brass ring. And what it does is it teaches you, if you put the work away for a while, and you look at it, it should show you all your weaknesses, okay? As far as Kickstarter or crowdfunding goes, it's a great way to see your work get published, get produced. So if you want to bring it to Image or to anywhere else, that's fine. If you want to do it on your own, that's fine. It's what do you want out of your career? And how big of a jar of peanut butter do you actually own?
So, Boom Studios has been making some pretty big waves, right, with creator-owned stuff. How does Image stay competitive in terms of drawing creators to bring their work to Image as opposed to a Boom Studios? I know there's some other smaller ones like Vault is kind of coming into its own. IDW is starting to do more creator-owned stuff instead of the license as much.
I think it depends on what kind of a deal you're looking for and what kind of deal you're getting. I don't know what Boom or IDW or any of them, I don't know what their deal is, okay? But I have heard that some studios want your IP, that some studios want to represent you, that some studios will pay you a small page rate, but for that page rate, they want to represent you exclusively to television and movies and things like that. That I've even heard of publishers that say, we'll keep the trademark, you keep the copyright, or we'll keep the copyright, you keep the trademark, or something stupid like that. Like, no, don't ever fall for that one. You need both. It needs to be yours. So the real question is are you willing to accept a small page rate or whatever to lose these things that may be important to you later down the road if you have something that takes off? At Image, it's a gamble. We don't hide that fact. But you walk away with it, it's yours. And we don't tell you how to do it. I've never, I will say no on a cover, because a cover is commerce. But I will never say no on a story or anything like that, because it's your creation.
I read articles, so I don't know the inner workings. I had to get your perspective, because like the knowledge that you have is unmatched in many respects.
Well, I think it all depends. I mean, like, I like Ross Ritchie and Philip Sadik. I think they're both great guys. And I got nothing to say against IDW or anything like that. I really, I'm just not a very competitive person.
Yeah.
So, saying how we keep competitive, I don't really know. I think it's just everyone has a choice. And this is the thing that I think is much better about today. You have a lot of choices for creativity. You can do a Kickstarter and create a book. You can do a online comic. You can do a comic for a publisher, and there's plenty of publishers around with diverse material. Dark Horse, IDW, Boom, Aftershock. There's tons of them. So pick. If you've got something good and you pick that studio, that house that you think you fit in best with. There's a big difference between an Oni book and a Fantagraphics book.
Yeah,
I think so.
Oh, huge difference.
There's a huge difference between, there's differences between Image and Dark Horse, let's say, or Image and Boom and that kind of thing. Everybody kind of falls into different niches. So very hard to say.
Will we see more ShadowHawk again in the future?
A writer that I really like has some interest in it. I don't know that we'll be able to come to any kind of deal. I won't be doing anymore. Okay. I'm kind of more or less semi-retired. And if I did do more, my leanings would be more towards something a lot more alternative than ShadowHawk.
Okay.
It just doesn't interest me to do that. So if we can come to some kind of, the quarantine has screwed everything up. Yeah. But if we can come to some kind of arrangement with this person, then yeah, we may, but it's not something I would do.
Okay. Is there anything that you want to talk about in terms of Shadowline? I know Shadowline's got a lot of titles coming out through that publishing house, I guess you could call it, or studio, or arm. Yeah. Is there any titles that you're excited that are going to come out that haven't come out yet, or?
I'm excited about everything I publish, otherwise I wouldn't publish it.
Yeah, I know. Well, I meant like that hasn't come out yet that you're excited about that you.
Oh, we have a brand new Bomb Queen series coming out.
Oh, cool.
That should be cool. And, it's like all the other Bomb Queen series. It's, completely 100% wrong from start to finish. Our tagline for it is it's guaranteed to offend everyone. Which I'm sure all the internet people who get offended about everything are gonna, want to burn me at the stakes. But I'm like, don't buy it.
Yeah,
it's real simple.
Yeah. We live in the age of sensitivity, so
yeah, you have the absolute right to determine what you want to buy and support and what you don't want to buy and support. You don't have the right to tell us what we should or shouldn't publish. Mm-hmm. That's where I draw the line. You don't have that right. So, Bomb Queen's going to, it's it's a 4-issue storyline called Trump Card.
I can't wait to read that.
She decides that the only way to stop Trump from becoming president for life is to run against him. So it's guaranteed to offend everyone straight across the board, which is fine with me. It's like, I don't care. Offend everyone. It's like, wake them up. Art is supposed to be, it's supposed to be subversive. Okay. Mm-hmm. It should be subversive. It should communicate. It should say something. And if art makes you uncomfortable, then that's okay.
Yeah.
That's perfectly okay. You know, you can ignore it. I don't like hip hop music. So my whole thing about hip hop music is I don't listen to it.
Mhm.
It doesn't bother me. And those people who do like it, they can enjoy it and have it. And I'm perfectly okay with that too.
Yeah. And then before we get out of here, I wanted to ask one more question in terms of industry. And you've seen the industry go through so many changes, ups and downs. We're living in another, I would say, down period, right? Maybe we're coming out of it now that stores are reopening. I was wondering, what, in your opinion, do you think the industry could use at this moment to sustain and to grow?
Well, it's difficult to say because I think everything opened those, and I think this is being proven out, that things opened far too soon.
Yep.
In many places. I think too many people, especially in America, are being stupid about this. I saw this, I think really we just need to get back to business again. But in order to do that, the first thing we have to do is attack this virus. Mm-hmm. And there doesn't seem to be much of a will to do that. My parents, like I said, my dad was in World War II. That generation, they did with food rationing, they did with they did without. And the generation before them, the people that grew up in Depression. Now I see these morons out there yelling and screaming about wearing a face mask because it goes against their rights. And this was the same argument that they had about seatbelts. And it's like, no, you idiot, you know? So the first thing we need to do is, you know, open up a little bit smarter and get the stores back on their feet again. And that includes a lot of things, returnability, better percentages for them, for retailers, you know, so they can buy their books a little cheaper. You know, maybe some event things that can help retailers stabilize a little bit right now. But, you know, first things first. And the first thing is to get rid of the virus, so it's not as ubiquitous as it is. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then reopening, and when we reopen, everyone, publishers, distributors, everyone needs to try hard to get retailers back on their feet again, and whatever that takes. And I think you'll find most creators will do more things like store signings and special promotions and things like that. More publishers will try to lower their percentages. Diamond will lower theirs, hopefully, so we have easier plateaus for retailers to get to. Mm-hmm. I think that's really the only thing we can do, you know, is try to make it easier, you know, and bring people into stores. Things like like Robert's book, you know, this week, that helps. You know, if we have other books similar to that could help. You know, I don't know exactly what they would be. But it seems to me like Marvel could do a few things. It seems to me like, you know, Boom, maybe with Lumberjanes or one of their better, you know, bigger titles could do it. Mm-hmm. Lock and Key, something like that. I'm just not sure, you know, I mean, and it would be totally up to them. But I think those kind of initiatives can only help. And that's what we need to do. We need to help. Yeah. Because as imperfect as our system is, it's a very symbiotic relationship and a very symbiotic system. A lot of people want to blame publishers or distributors or retailers or whatever. And it's like, no. We're all in this boat, and this boat may be leaking. It's up to all of us to do our best to make the boat seaworthy. That's what I think.
Well, I think that's a good way to cap this interview. I want to thank you again for taking time out of your day to do this with me. It's an honor and a pleasure.
All right, Ryan, anytime.